right, it is 9:32, so we're going to go ahead and get started today. So, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Lily's already started at 5 years old asking, based off of the fact that we had Mother's Day, now we have Father's Day, why there are no kids' days. So I gave her the same answer that I gave to her that I received when I was around her age, which is every day is Kids' Day. And it went over with her about as well as it went over with me. So, but it means a lot more now on the parent side. So just a quick note. So next week we won't have class because it's the breakfast with dads morning. And so this class then will finish up on July 5th. And then another person will take over the class at that point. So we're talking about encouragement today and how to encourage and advise others. And so a way that you can encourage those who are teaching is to show up and participate, which I'm kind of preaching to the choir, I guess as they would say, in right now, since this is all the people who showed up right at the beginning and have been really good at participating. So I want to thank you all for that, and we're going to continue doing so today. So last week we went through 2 scenarios. I think we have most people who were in here were also in here last week. So before we look at the last 3 scenarios that we have to go through, let's start here. So we're going to read just real quick from Romans chapter 12 and 1 Corinthians chapter 12 to see what those 2 chapters say about the body. So I don't know exactly where this is starting up. So this would be starting in verse 3. For through the grace given to me, I say to every man among you, not to think more highly of himself than he ought to think, but to think so as to have sound judgment, as God has allotted to each a measure of faith. For just as we have many members in one body, and all the members do not have the same function, so we who are many are one body in Christ, and individually members one of another. And since we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let us exercise them accordingly. If prophecy, according to the proportion of his faith. If service, in his serving, or he who teaches in his teaching, or he who exhorts in his exhortation, he who gives with liberality, he who leads with diligence, he who shows mercy with cheerfulness. And then we're going to go ahead and skip through to the middle of 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Now there are a variety of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are a variety of ministries, but the same Lord. There are varieties of effects, but the same God who works all things in all persons. But to each one is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. For to one is given the word of wisdom through the Spirit, to another the word of knowledge according to the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by the one Spirit, and to another the effecting of miracles, and to another prophecy, and to another the distinguishing of spirits, to another various kinds of tongues, and to another the interpretation of tongues. But one and the same Spirit works all these things, distributing to each one individually just as he wills. For just as the body is one, yet has many parts, and all the parts of the body, though they are many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we are all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and we are all made to drink of one Spirit. For the body is not one part, but many. If the foot says, because I am not a hand, I am not part of the body, is it not for this reason any less a part of the body? And if the ear says, because I am not an eye, I am not a part of the body. Sorry, I lost my place. It is not for this reason any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But now God has arranged the parts, each one of them in the body, just as he desired. If they are all one part, where would the body be? But now there are many parts, but one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, or again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, it is much truer that the parts of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary. And those parts of the body which we consider less honorable, on these we bestow greater honor. And our less presentable parts become much more presentable, whereas our more presentable parts have no need of it. But God has so composed the body, giving more abundant honor to the part which lacked, so that there may be no division in the body, but that the parts may have the same care for one another. And if one part of the body suffers, all parts suffer with it. If a part is honored, all the parts rejoice with it. Now you are Christ's body, and individually parts of it. And God has appointed in the church first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then miracles, then gifts of healings, helps, administrations, and various kinds of tongues. All are not apostles, are they? All are not prophets, are they? All are not teachers, are they? All are not workers of miracles, are they? All do not have gifts of healings, do they? All do not speak with tongues, do they? All do not interpret, do they? But earnestly desire the greater gifts. So, sorry, just real quick, I'm trying to make sure that we're set on the live stream fine, and we are. So what we can learn from this, that we learned in the first class that we went over, is that all of us have gifts and all of us are expected to use them. So all of us are members of the body. All of us are expected to be active in the body. All gifts are useful and necessary. So just because it's something that isn't up in front of people doesn't mean it's not a useful gift. In fact, a gift of giving a word to someone at the moment when they need it, or helping someone when they're in a tough situation, can make a bigger impact than a Bible class or a sermon. So gifts should be used in love. Remember to be humble in your gift, but also not afraid to use your gift. I think one of the parts that it talked about at the end is all the parts of the body rejoice with one another, and all the parts of the body essentially struggle with one another. So it's showing just how connected the body should be, that we all are working together and all are so united that we're, when we get good news, like we did yesterday, right, on the thing, that all of us are excited and happy and rejoicing in that. But when there's a tough time, that everyone rallies around that person and goes through it with them. So with that, we went through last week. Oh, real quick, first of all, just to put all this on one page. So starting with the least people who at least have the gift who is, good grief, I'm trying to think of how to say this. The gifts who are least prevalent in the wider population, according to Doug Hamilton's testing results. Giving is first of all, so I'm not going to read the 2% and everything from now on, or where the passage is, but giving is the desire to share their resources with those in need. They are generous and they are sincere in their sharing without seeking recognition. Prophecy or confrontation, those who with this gift are watchful and alert for individuals and actions that are not in line with God's word. They are ready to provide correction and to confront sin in the church and in the world. Missionaries take God's word to areas where it is not prevalent. They facilitate the formation of churches despite obstacles presented by the world. Encouragers consistently provide positive, welcoming, and are intentional about building others up. They provide courage to others. They promote harmony and unity between the different parts of the body. Evangelists tell everyone they meet about the death, burial, and resurrection. They have an unquenchable desire to see everyone saved. Teachers study, analyze, and proclaim biblical truth to help members of the body to learn and grow. They communicate to others what they have learned through research and experience in a way that is easy to understand. Administrators guide those in their sphere of influence to a long-term goal through care and diligence. They plan, organize, manage, and they inspire others towards a shared goal. Nurturers focus on helping others to grow in Christ. They protect and guide vulnerable Christians. They protect, provide for, nurture, correct, and restore members of the body. Mercy givers focus on the emotional and physical well-being of others. They are empathetic and they're compelled to alleviate the suffering of others. Finally, servants help others and the body as a whole by meeting needs. They're focused on practical needs and are good at executing tasks, and the work is often behind the scenes. All right, so if we need to come back to this page, that is fine, just let me know. But that is kind of a high-level summary of all the gifts, and then in 2 weeks, we'll try to talk about how now they all work together. So, last week, we went over someone who was just starting to learn that they were gifted and how they could get started. We had some good advice for them. Then we talked about someone who has a gift but is reluctant to use said gift. And this week, we're going to go through scenarios 3, 4, and 5. So we have about, 35 minutes to get through that. So we're going to try to do about 10-ish minutes per scenario. All right. So Jenny is an elementary school teacher. You two are starting to become good friends, and you meet up for dinner once a month. Jenny loves her job and always has a story to tell about one of her students. She tutors after school and over the summer because she places a high importance on making sure students grow as much as possible. She is passionate about quality education and takes her influence on young minds very seriously. Recently, Jenny made an offhand comment to you that teaching her Sunday school class at church doesn't feel the same. When you asked her to explain what she meant, she said she is obligated to teach at church, given that that is her occupation, but she doesn't feel the same passion as a teacher at church as she does at elementary school. She brushed it off as either an issue with the curriculum or that she cannot build as strong a connection when class time is only 45 minutes once a week. So, first question. Do you think Jenny is actually gifted in teaching? And if not, what do you think her gift actually is? Go ahead, Hans. You went ahead and just grabbed the microphone, to have it, so. Okay.
She probably can teach. She might be looking for that thing that we all want, which is to feel good about what we're doing. And those are ups and downs. That's probably why encouragement is so important, I would say, for teachers especially, but certainly preachers or just anybody that's performing within the body of Christ. So I would state that she might just be looking to feel really good all the time about what she's trying to do. Brian's next.
Go ahead, Brian.
I think the key word in that scenario is the second line, second paragraph, where she said she is obligated to teach at church. When you're talking about using your gifts, any one of those that you had up there earlier, there should be no obligation, either expressed or implied by anyone in the body. It should be something that you feel called to do. Now, that's not to say that she wouldn't be gifted as a teacher, but she may need a little bit of mentoring or some guidance to help develop that gift and to actually feel the same passion she does as an instructor in church as she does for her daily job.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Kevin. Tracy, then Kevin.
I would say the hard part is, and I think the wrong part to this is, and maybe, okay, let's put it this way, you would go through the mature and the immature of the different types.
Yep.
And so the immature part in this is that she's basing it off feelings and emotions. And so, and that's so hard today because that's pushed on us so much that we base things off how we feel. And I know it's used, and this is a scenario I know, but it's used a couple times in there that it's about feeling. Mm-hmm. And I think if you can cross over to more maturity thinking, we should be having an eternal focus on everything we do. And so the feelings, yes, they're going to be there. That's human nature. But if we have that eternal focus, it should be more of a hardcore, what am I doing eternally in life? And so then I would think things around the church would become a little bit more important than maybe a profession, But, I mean, it's all important, but just trying not to base how you live off your emotions and feelings.
Mm-hmm. Kevin.
You're welcome. I wonder if we're being a little hard on Jenny. Her love for teaching is evident in what she's chosen in doing, and that may be a sign of a spiritual gift. It may be a sign of a talent that she enjoys. There are two different objects I think we're talking about, possibly. But if indeed the legitimate complaint in this whole thing is, I only get 45 minutes, it takes, and then she would expand, it takes 15 minutes just to herd the cats and get them ready, and then I'll get 30 minutes, and then I just don't feel like I'm exercising. Now, I would go dive deeper. I don't feel like I'm exercising the gift like I can at school because, number one, they're coming expecting certain things, and number two, I don't have enough time with these kids, and there's a relational aspect to teaching and a drive. I really want them to learn, but how do they do this in this setup at that we call a Sunday school, but it is nowhere near a, come on, be honest, it's not a school in the sense that we have a school, right? And so I would let her have a bit of a break and say, how could we enhance this that would be helpful and help Jenny to walk through ways to express, indeed, if there's a gift of teaching, as opposed to, as you've already mentioned, an obligation, because after all, that's what you already do. You're good at it, obviously. The kids love you, and you should be teaching, and you feel somewhat trapped in this outer perception. It's like the knight that is the son on the search of the Holy Grail who just simply wanted to sing. Okay. Thank you.
Just a movie reference.
My
there.
concern, my concern with this is that she didn't like the curriculum. So I'm concerned because what curriculum does she want to teach? We have a curriculum for her, but if she wants to teach her own, and we don't know what that is.
So to your point, then you'd have to dig in a little bit more to find out, right? Carla has a comment, but Addie first.
So I'm just trying to think of like the gift of teaching, how you described it was a lot of research, like thorough research and diving in deep. At the elementary school level, I don't know how deep it gets other than just, some basics. And it sounds like she's really passionate about tutoring one-on-one and make sure they're growing. So I would say that's more of a nurturing,
Man. Addie hit the nail on the head.
nurturing or encouraging type. And so once you get into, I think, like y'all said it with Sunday school, it's really a short amount of time. There's not a lot of time for, one-on-one, especially if it's, Sundays are kind of hit and miss for students. Can be hard to make connections on a deeper level. It sounds like that's something she really needs. So,
Yep.
if she's not as feeling as passionate, that's probably why. It doesn't mean that she's not doing a good job or can't do it. So.
Yes. Okay, Carla, and then we're going to go over a little bit of what we've all said. So
I think she's burnt out. And
that's definitely possible. That's definitely possible.
Well, it says she's teaching school, then she's tutoring after school, and she's working during the summer. I think it's a bit much. And by the time she gets to church, she may just be emotionally exhausted with teaching. And so I'm going to suggest that she talk about some other ways to serve in teaching, for example, teaching teachers, or
Is that a really good point?
managing the curriculum, and being the helper for a little bit until she gets her feet going. Burnout is a serious thing, and we don't think we're supposed to be burnout, especially women at the church. So
Yes.
that's what I'm going to suggest.
So we actually have a scenario specifically talking about burnout, so you're just ahead of the game on this.
That usually happens.
Exactly. So to take a couple of things that people have said, so I put the rest of the questions up there to see exactly where we're going with this. So Addie hit the nail on the head. Now, again, these are scenarios that I just came up with, so it's always interesting to see what you all see that was like, well, that was not where I was going, but I mean, if you go that direction with it, that's perfectly fine. I have 0 notes on where I wanted this to go. So, but yes, so in this case, the question is, does Hans have his laser pointer? So, this is not an effective laser pointer as much as Hans's is, but so essentially, if you have someone, I was pointing at the wrong one even, but anyway, so there's a difference between occupation and the things that you like to do and what your gift is. A little bit of this is actually based on my mom. So my mom is an elementary school teacher, but when she does like the giftedness stuff, teaching is not her gift, and she made the comment that she was surprised that was the case and was wondering why that was. But if you look into this a little bit further, it's because it's not necessarily the passing knowledge on to people part that Jenny is interested in. It's more the growth of the individuals. So Carla's comment, which is what Addie hit on exactly. We did not talk about this ahead of time, by the way. So, but Carla's comment is that, so then how would you encourage or advise her to reconsider her gift? So maybe use those skills that she has in teaching, but to help others to grow. So maybe helping the teachers. So she has the kind of professional knowledge of teaching. So how can I pass that professional knowledge on to someone else and kind of step in and help advise in a certain person grow? So helping the teachers, advising the teachers or mentoring the teachers, I think would be a great step to go for Jenny. Go ahead, Mike.
I think this to me comes across as an attitude problem more than anything. She's very good at what she does at school, but however, she feels the obligation, one. Two, she uses the excuse of the curriculum and I don't have enough time. We understand not having enough time and we all deal with that, but I think that attitude is playing over into the way she presents the lessons and stuff to her kids. And that causes her more frustration because she's not making that connection. Whereas if that, and it may be a spiritual maturity problem too. So therefore, I would agree with what Carla said. Maybe she needs to step back in a way and reconsider what's going on.
So this last question I had up here was purely I don't know what the answer to this question is. And we have several elders in here who can maybe answer it. So would you advise her to step away from teaching Bible class temporarily in order to, or is that something you can do while you're still, Kevin said no, don't do that.
Minimum of 10 years.
What? You have to do it a minimum of 10 years?
You can't get out for 10 years.
Wow, that's unfortunate, yeah. All right, this next one, I think gets a little bit even more onto some of this. So, all right, good discussion on that one. We have about 20 minutes left, so right on schedule. Scenario number 4, someone who is burnt out. So Carla's ahead of us. Hannah is the definition of a servant. She enjoys working behind the scenes to set up and tear down the auditorium for events, organizes and participates in meal trains, frequently hosts Wednesday night meal, hosts small group every week, and more. About a year ago, Hannah was asked by 2 separate people around the same time to volunteer. One asked her to be in the nursery during Bible class and worship every week, and the other asked her to serve on a committee that meets every Monday evening at 6 p.m. So just to be clear, that means that she's in the nursery from essentially 9:30 to 12. Hannah, have a paragraph here, but not up there. Okay. Hannah is your close friend, and you noticed recently that she seems exhausted, stressed, and cynical. Hannah and her husband work full-time, and they have several children. You recall that Hannah was concerned about being in the nursery all Sunday, every Sunday, given her family situation, but the volunteer coordinator is also a friend of hers, and she couldn't turn her down. Hannah has frequently complained about the timing of the committee meetings, but does not say anything since that day and time works better for the other committee members. So, there's a lot of places you could go with this one. How would you approach talking to Hannah about being burnt out, and what advice would you give her? Brian.
Well, the first thing you have to remember, particularly if you're in Hannah's situation or if, Hannah is just a good friend of yours, the way the scenario plays it out, is that God is infinite. We are finite resources. There's only so much of ourselves that we have to spend. I actually was into something similar with this. It wasn't in church, but it was in my VFW post back in Illinois. I was constantly volunteering, and it finally just got to the point to where I couldn't handle it anymore. I stepped back there, and I've been here 10 years and really haven't been that active even in the post year now. So it's something where I think you have to first acknowledge to yourself that it is okay to be burned out, that you can't do everything or be everything to everyone. And then at that point, you can start talking about, okay, spa days, whatever, to go ahead and get her feeling better. But to prioritize the work that she is doing and to give herself permission to say no.
So good advice, saying it's okay. It's okay that you're doing too much, and it's okay to step back. Tracy.
I feel like there's, if we go to the scripture tells us what we the setup of the church and what we are to have. And a lot of the other things I think that we throw in are extras. And so I think sometimes we have to evaluate all the extras. We push for all this kid stuff and youth stuff and these hooplas and that kind of thing. And it's like, I don't know, I guess I'm probably not a great example because I did a lot of that for my own children at home and having homeschooled. I didn't expect some of those extra things out of the church family. We made sure we did that at home. So I don't know, sometimes I think maybe we need to evaluate all the extras and do we need them? I'm not saying they're wrong. It doesn't have to be in scripture for it to be right.
Yeah,
But I'm
yeah.
just saying, I don't know, sometimes maybe we push a little too much on all the extras and I think it's okay. We have permission to let things fail. So if you don't have a volunteer for this event, we're not having it. And I think sometimes we get into the routine and traditions of certain things happening all the time. Maybe we need to not have a volunteer for that so it can die and not have it anymore.
That's a good point. Gene?
Question. This one's dead.
Uh-oh.
Hello. Hello.
It shouldn't be.
We should have a funeral.
Funeral for the microphone. I don't know what to tell you. Just, yeah, that one. That one just muted you.
Thank
That's all
you
it
for the
did.
thank you for the resurrection. First question is, how would you approach talking to Hannah if Hannah doesn't ask you, mind your own business? Now, if she asks you, then the first thing you probably need to do is help her evaluate what is important to Hannah. All of this stuff can't be number one. And then you can help her figure out what her real goals are, and then teach her the simple word no. And I'm not talking about K-N-O-W. I'm talking about N-O. Sometimes you have to learn to say, that's not where I want to go. That's not what I want to do. So thank you for asking, but no.
Yes, so we just, huh?
No, please.
Oh, so we
I'll go
discussed.
after you, sir.
Okay. So what, I just don't want to make too many comments because if I start making the comments, then that limits the discussion. So when we talked about servants and immaturity in servants, they have a really tough time saying no. So this is definitely a scenario where someone just refuses to continue to say no. And also servants kind of have a tendency to pick up stuff, to Tracy's point, if maybe something actually needs to go away, but servants won't let it go away because they keep overextending themselves to make it happen. That's an area of maturity to learn, okay, if I'm the only one consistently volunteering for this and I don't want to do it, there's probably a sign to be had there. Hans?
So I agree with Gene. Did you hear that? I agree with Gene. And to that point, the rest of the questions are like you're almost circumventing Hannah. You're wanting to fix Hannah in what you perceive as being a problem. Hannah will at some point either be given by the grace of God more energy or whatever we're going to call it, spirit, to get through and push through. And if and when she does fall down, then that's when you encourage her that that's okay. But when you're talking about going to the elders on behalf of her or something like that, we don't promote that anyway because we want you to come and talk to us. So Hannah is doing a good thing, and Hannah through grace will be able to find what she can do. The other thing is we call them vacations, Sabbath, sabbatical.
Sabbatical, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta be willing to just step down. And it's not down, it's more of a lateral rest. I wouldn't call it stepping down.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Addie, here in just a second. So I'd put that, should you advocate for Hannah by going to the elders on her behalf for a reason? Because I knew it would probably generate some strong opinions, one way or the other. The elders are saying, don't do that, so FYI. Go ahead, Addie.
So a lot of this, it seems like a lot that Hannah's doing, but as a fellow servant, I would say a lot of this would be very gratifying for someone who is a servant. So a lot of these things may seem like a lot, but maybe not. I think the double booking yourself for nursery is a problem.
Is the line. Yeah.
So, if I were to talk to her about this at all, I would say no one's going to be mad at you for saying no. Like, there's other volunteers. This other person is her friend, and she would appreciate and understand if she told her no. And if she was a good friend, she would, accept that no. I think that's all I had.
So that's a really good point, which a couple people have also hit on. You don't 100% know that Hannah is actually unsatisfied in doing everything. Now, it probably seems like it based on the comments that Hannah's making, right? But to Addie's point, 95% of this could be stuff that Hannah is happy about, and it's just that 5% that she's getting frustrated that she feels like she's doing and shouldn't have to, or that's an inconvenience for her. Carla.
It's interesting in these first 3 scenarios, I even thought this last week, was that we didn't talk about taking Hannah back to why she's doing what she's doing. And it reminded me of a situation where I was encouraging somebody here, and she didn't want to come to service. But I said, what if that is your way to show God's glory? What if your being here is what He requires? And so what I'm saying is putting these scenarios in the way of talking about how we serve God.
Mm-hmm.
And that really did help. I sought her out and just talked through some things, but we don't know what God requires of us 100%, but we know the basics, and we know He wants us to worship Him. And so if we worship Him through teaching, that's great, if you feel that's what you need to do. But I think taking the person back a little bit about where they are spiritually, because a lot of times that's the issue.
Yeah, so digging even deeper into it, and so did someone else have Kevin?
I respectfully push back on that it is not the coordinator's position to go and talk with her. I think that it would be more appropriate if we have a coordinator plus a best friend who notices there's an issue that Hannah may not even notice herself, and her internal drive to exercise her gifts may be overriding her drive for personal, psychological, spiritual, emotional health. And so the coordinator, being her friend, notices something that she's blind to, and as a coordinator, that's her function. It is certainly appropriate for her to come in and talk with her about that. That's one thing. The second thing is to help her see that perhaps what she's doing in the long term is limiting what she's going to be able to do in the future because she's taking on so much now. 19 years old, I was playing intramural basketball. I blew my knee and was obviously having great pain in my knee, but we were behind, and I knew I was the key to winning this game. And so I stepped out of the game, and then I came back into the game. I forced them to let me back in the game.
After it stiffened up,
you can do that, right? So Paul Vanderlinden, a good friend, very tall, had blown his knee, and he came up, put his arm around my shoulder, and he said, look, if you don't get out of the game now, you will pay for this later. Well, I did get out of the game then, and I also paid for it later. But the point is that he took the loving, caring thing, and he saw something that my drive was, I wanted to play, I wanted to win. I'm really good at basketball, and the drive for me to get out and do that was just, it short-circuited my thinking. In spite of the pain, I wanted to play. I think relate a bit with Hannah there, and I think that if this is your gift, you may be blind to what you're actually doing to yourself in helping others. She's a servant. That's her makeup. God gave her that. And so there's a drive there for her, and I think it's a loving thing for part of the body to come in and say, you've got to take some break here. You need to look at this from a different angle, or you might want to consider this, and then to talk it out and pray it out, and to see how the Spirit will give wisdom in how she continues to utilize her tremendous gift of being a servant.
Did someone? Okay, no one else had a. Yeah, so Tracy.
Well, just to piggyback off what Kevin was saying, so I think that comes, my opinion, and my experience personally, having been a person that takes on too much at times, is that comes more in the mentor question that you have up there. And that, because, she's being exhausted, stressed, cynical, and she's starting to be negative about and complaining. And that probably is not normally in your nature. I know it's not mine. And when you get that way, then you have, like Carla said, the burnout. And so someone who's close to her can have that conversation with her. I don't think we should go above, like, to go to the eldership for her, because then that could cause, I think that's happened before, and then that person's offended. No, I didn't want to step down from that, and what am I doing wrong? And then it turns into a whole thing because the person's not actually doing that. So, but I think from a mentorship, I think that's crucial, because I think somebody has come into my life that has told me, you don't have to do everything, and this isn't healthy, and so you have permission, like Jean said, to say no, and so. That's a maturity thing. You get to a point and you're not afraid. You don't care what people think. No, I'm not going to do that right now.
Yes, exactly. So I know that, I know that I definitely have, growing up, had a really hard time saying no. I've kind of tried to, back into the psychological reasons as to why that is that no one cares about here. But kids have taught me how to say no because they're constantly testing those boundaries, right? But that has then helped me to then, when I've been asked to do extra stuff here that I've said no because I'm doing this, and this already. So therefore, if we want to rearrange, that's fine, but I'm maxed out where I am. So that's part of the maturity, which is the big part of this, and it's really hard. How do you get someone to be mature? If someone could answer that question, that would be, you could probably make a lot of money doing that. But yeah, so that's the point, is that you're gonna have to help Hannah to see that she is not being mature. And yes, it is not probably appropriate to go running to the elders about that when Hannah is not even aware that you are doing that. Mike.
Part of that is if you're a loving brother, sister, friend, you'll go to Hannah and say, hey, I noticed you're doing this, this, and this, and you're awful busy. What can I help take off the plate? And offer yourself in behalf of that, so that she knows that she's got support and the ability to pass things off. So that kind of opens the door to further discussion if needed.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the Bible's fairly clear that if you have an issue with, now this is a little bit different, right? Because it's not like you have this issue with someone, but the first thing you do is go to that person, right? So I guess the elders can speak on behalf of, transitioning this into more of like, how do you approach big picture things. My understanding from the elders is that if you go running to them and say that this person's a problem, they're going to say, have you talked to them about it yet? So if you're not willing to do that with someone, then perhaps it's not as big a problem as you think it is, right? So, but I do think it would be appropriate to at least talk to the coordinators or whoever they are about making sure that they are being aware of those who they are coordinating and making sure that they aren't burnt out, or that they have all the resources they need to do things correctly, or whatever the case is. So, well, we have 4 minutes left, so I wouldn't say it's enough time to necessarily get into our next scenario. So any other comments on this, or comments in general as we look at big picture stuff? Kevin?
You've always got something to say.
Yeah.
Anyone has a comment?
It's my gift. My gift is talking, not necessarily making sense. The thing that I think too, that some people who are gifted and have a drive to feel, I hate to say it this way because it just hit me, I may be here, to have a drive to feel needed or have a drive to make sure things happen. So if it is to be, it's up to me. I've got to step in. I heard you say that, something like in your serving. It's like, well, somebody's got to do it, and I'm going to, because there's an internal drive to do that. There's also needs to be within the body the ability to let others develop the gifts.
Yes.
And there's many, many times where a need arose, well, I can do that, and stepped in, and stepped in, and stepped in, instead of allowing there to be a development in other people to grow in those areas and to discover, I'm gifted here. The Lord has given me an ability that I didn't know I had, and to allow them to do that, because I was too busy stepping in myself. Some of us need to step back and encourage others to grow, and they don't get that opportunity, and with that also the ability to fail. Because if you don't have the support to make a decision and fail, you'll never grow. Because part of growing, in fact, the biggest part of growing, is doing it and failing. And that you need to, as John Maxwell recently authored a book, that it is important to fail. And that you need to fail forward. When you fail, you get up and keep facing ahead and moving ahead. If you don't have the opportunity to fail, you'll never grow. We learn best by trying and adjusting and trying and adjusting and trying and adjusting. But if we don't ever give the opportunity to try, there is no adjusting, there is no growth. I've said the same thing 5 different ways, and it's now time for me to stop.
That's okay, I'll fix it. I'm a carpenter. Everything you said is accurate. I'm not going to push back. What you asked prior was if somebody could I guess maybe I would say bottle wisdom or anything with maturity. It is exactly experience. And failing forward. When you fall forward, walking is a controlled fall. You're catching yourself every time you take a step. And so in regards to this scenario, I'm so glad it's not real, and yet it is, that we need to remember that it's the experiences. I'm top failure, I think, in this room, and that's a good thing. But I don't want anybody else to have that problem, so I will help teach them what they need to do or try to do, follow Christ, so that they don't make those failures. However, experience is what gives us that maturity, and so yes, we need to allow people the experience, but we need to be there along your side. And I don't like hearing the word punt. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, I mean.
Okay, all right, well, I don't have to expound on it. I don't like to quit, but when somebody first said, well, I guess we're just gonna have to pull back and punt, I'm like, what? No, we don't punt, we drive through. I don't even know how to play football, but my point is that society will say punt. We just need to figure out how to help somebody fall forward.
Hans is a big go for it on 4th down guy, so that's what we found out from this. So just real quick to wrap this up. So a secondary application from this class is all of us should be doing all those things that I had on the big list, right? But there's certain things that you are gifted in doing, but a way that maybe we can all get better, something that we can all do better at is nurturing, right? And so taking someone, so if you're good at a certain thing, helping them mentor and nurture someone along to being good at that as well. And to Kevin's and Hans's point, you can't ever do that if you're not letting them have that experience. So, all right, thank you everyone for your discussion today. We will meet again in 2 weeks.